Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first coincidence miracle today is from a woman who tells us that she was married for 5 years to a wonderful man. She said for the first 2 years he worked in New York City at the Twin Towers, and on 9/11 there was a meeting that he had to go to off-site. So the company had arranged for a meeting somewhere else on that particular day, and so he escaped the 9/11 disaster because the company had already rescheduled a meeting somewhere else, and he had caught a plane to a different destination. But after 9/11, he got another job in a different company, and he'd worked in this other company now for 3 years, and he was on a trip for that company, and he got into a car accident, and unfortunately he passed away. She relates to us that she takes all of this as a coincidence in her life, and she's very grateful to God for it. He was a wonderful man. She had a wonderful marriage for 5 years. She's very grateful for that great marriage, and also that he escaped 9/11 so that they had 3 more years of marriage. But he did a lot of great, wonderful things for people in the last 3 years of his life because of his experience escaping the 9/11 disaster. That changed his attitude about a lot of things, and he was very proactive in helping a lot of people and trying to do a lot of good things. So she relates this to us as coincidence miracles, that God intervened and helped her have 5 years of a wonderful marriage with this man because he escaped the 9/11 disaster. Our next coincidence miracle is from a woman who tells us that her mother was alive during the concentration camps of Auschwitz, and she was arrested. Her mother was arrested and was being transported to Auschwitz during the Second World War, and she was fortunate, the mother was fortunate to escape the train. There was a train stop, and her mother and a few other people managed to escape. And her mother lived to be 100 years old after that event. And so this woman is relating to us that after that, her mother got married and had children. And so the coincidence is that this woman who's writing to us is still alive and had a wonderful life, because her mother had escaped in Auschwitz. Otherwise, if her mother did not escape, this particular woman who's telling us the story would not have had a wonderful life and had a wonderful mother, and heard about all of the terrors in Auschwitz from her mother and all of the concentration camp issues, etc. But her coincidence miracle was that her mother had escaped. That's the coincidence miracle that she wants to relate to us. Our next coincidence miracle happened one day last summer when I was at the beach passing out cards at the beach. I came upon a picnic table, and at the picnic table there were two women with books open, and they were making copious notes, and I was very curious as I went by, so I said, golly, it looks like you guys have opened up an office here. So I passed out the card, told them about coincidence miracles, etc., and they asked a lot of questions, and I'm delighted that they did, and I was really impressed that they were so interested in asking so many questions. And one of the questions they asked was, how do you know, how can you be sure when you're talking to God that you are getting inspirations from God? And I told them that in our book, we have a chapter that covers that, and it's called Fleecing is what it's called. And I told them, I can give you two examples. I have 12 examples in my book, but I can give you two examples that most people are familiar with. In the book of Judges, chapter 6, there's a story there of General Gideon who asked God to help him be sure that he was hearing God correctly. And then I said there's a wonderful story in the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 24. And with that, they got all excited and said, golly, this is amazing. We're asking you questions, but the fact is we've been working here for the last hour on a Bible study that we're going to tonight. After we leave the beach, we'll be going to a Bible study meeting, and the assignment for the week was to study and bring something interesting back to class, something interesting from the book of Genesis. And so it's interesting you brought up this story about coincidence miracles and fleecing in the book of Genesis chapter 24, so we can use that for tonight. And so they were very delighted, and I was delighted because this was an excellent coincidence miracle for me. I'm passing out cards about the books. I'm talking about coincidence miracles. And what happened was I was inspired to bring up Genesis chapter 24, and I didn't know that they were working on that, and that was their assignment. And it was wonderful. And the next thing that happened was on the next day, I went to a different beach, not the same beach, but a different beach. And when I arrived at a different time during the day than I had met these people on this particular day, but the next day I pulled into the parking lot of the next beach, got out of my car, and there was somebody getting out of their car right next to me. And who was it but the same people that I had met on the prior day at a different beach? So that was clearly another coincidence. And they related another story to me because they said, we were thinking about coincidence miracles, etc., when we talked to you yesterday, and we realized that we had a wonderful coincidence miracle that we didn't tell you about. And so they told me on this day in the parking lot, and their coincidence miracle was that they're both of Polish extraction, but they are citizens of the United States, and they were house shopping for the family. They're related, and they were, as a family, trying to purchase a house. And after a lot of frustration, they finally found this perfect, ideal, wonderful house, and they were having trouble closing the deal. There was bartering going on, and some bartering and some changing in prices, etc. And they were working with the real estate agent. And the coincidence miracle they wanted to relate to us is they found out that the seller of this ideal house that they wanted to get, they were also from Poland, and the real estate agent was also from Poland, and they relate the story to us that they believed that God pulled us all together for them, and somebody had offered another offer on the house, a little bit more money than they had offered, but the people who were involved in the real estate agent all decided to sell the house to them because they were Polish. So because they were Polish and they met all these Polish people, they got the house. They could have lost it because somebody else put in a bid for a little bit more money, but the people involved decided, no, we'll sell it to these people. So they're very delighted, they're all ecstatic about this house, and this just recently happened. And because we met in the prior day, it makes a wonderful coincidence miracle 2 days in a row with these people. The first day we brought up Genesis 24, and the second day we get out of our cars simultaneously. That was a coincidence miracle, and they tell us about this purchasing a house from a Polish family for a great price, and it was their ideal house. Our next coincidence miracle is from a woman who tells us that her niece at the age of 20 had contracted cancer, and it was a serious case of cancer. And what they did was they got very involved with social media and spread the news that they were soliciting prayers from everyone. And they're telling us the story and telling us they got over 1,000 people who said they would pray for her 20-year-old niece, and they're delighted to tell us that they had a miracle because she was cured. And then 10 years later, at the age of 30, she contracted cancer again, and they did the same thing and had, I don't know how many on the second time. She didn't tell me how many people, but they did the same thing. So I imagine they got something like 1,000 more people, and she was cured for the second time. So this is a delightful miracle for people who believe in prayer or who don't believe in prayer. This woman had 2 cases of cancer cured because they solicited, even strangers to pray for their niece. Our next coincidence miracle is very heartwarming. I wish you could have all been there to experience it. I met 4 women at the beach. They were all age 70 plus, 4 ladies. Amazing bonding between them. They have an annual beach meeting. For the last 10 years, they've been coming to the beach one day a year as a group to celebrate their union because they've been friends for like 60 years, since the 3rd grade. They have 2 of them were born on the same date. 3 of them have the same husband name. I think it was John or Joseph. I don't remember now. The 4 men, their husbands, have also bonded. They do golf and retreats, etc. together, the 4 men. They go to similar vacation spots every year. And a wonderful comment was that 2 marriages occurred among the 4 of them, 2 marriages in their family involving 4 of their children, where the 4 children became friends and wound up eventually getting married. So these people became friends ever since the 3rd grade, and now they are 70 years old or a little better, and had all these wonderful things. And coincidence miracles, my gosh, they have tons of stories among them of wonderful things that have happened. So they became friends, and now they behave even tighter than a typical family, and they have these celebrations once a year, as I said, for the last 10 years. Our next coincidence miracle is a group of 4 people who were asked to pray for a pregnancy, that a couple would become pregnant. And while they were praying, they got inspired to go back to the couple and say, look, sometimes God wants a child to be born 2 years later so they'll enter college the same time as their future spouse 20 years down the road. And that very night, Robert Morris, a Protestant minister on TBN television network, gave the exact same lecture that people in history and in the Bible were born at certain dates in order for them to be meeting other people in the Bible on other specific dates. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.